Hey everyone, Ketchup Kami-sama here with a piece of Ramlethal tech that you can add to your arsenal of already really strong corner pressure options that should help you continue to open up your opponent. Since the devs revealed the wall mechanic, essentially two schools of thought have emerged. One basically being break the wall and get the damage and meter, the other keep the wall and keep your OP. If you're needing a reason to keep the corner instead of just breaking it for the damage, I recommend watching SQ's video on it, which I will link in the description below, for a bit more of a detailed breakdown. But long story short, Ramlethal is the best character she can be when she has her opponent trapped in the corner, and depending on your situation, it might be more optimal to capitalize on this situation rather than just simply taking the damage. So what you'll be putting your opponent in is a meaty visual high-low mix-up that with throw options mixed in between that requires very little to actually set it up with. So you'll be able to hopefully loop this a handful of times before a wall breaks if you're managing to open up your opponent. This video will be broken down into about 4 different sections, so feel free to check out the timestamps below if you're looking for anything specific, just because this might get to be a bit long. But basically it'll be broken up into explaining how the basic version works, what you can do immediately off of the setup, alternative versions of how to achieve the setup, and also ways to counter this if on defense. So with that out of the way, let's just get into it. So the only thing that's really needed is to land a close slash on an aerial opponent at around Ramlethal's chest/neck area, but not blocking, of course. You have to be hitting them, so the most common way you'll be getting this off is either from H sword toss or the slash version within a combo. And since either of these specials are tied to like, what, 90% of Ramlethal's combos, you'll be able to get this situation a lot, thankfully. To give a quick demonstration of what it is, we'll set our friend to block mid since he's not too worried about his ankles, and you'll see what this is all about. So it's as easy as that. That's the entire execution setup. All you do after the close slash is super jump cancel, which is done by quickly hitting down and up forward, and that pretty much automatically sets up the timing for the mix. Be sure to do up forward and not just straight down and up so that the spacing isn't wonky after you land, and you'll see what I mean when we get further in. Additionally, it doesn't really matter what started the combo. It could be 2k into sword explosion, it could be standing dust RC into sword toss. It doesn't really matter. As long as you get the sword toss and the close slash, you're going to be set. Now, you're probably thinking, Ram's in the air forever, and Soul should just hit a button here, that'll definitely do the trick. And we'll set Soul to do a handful of different options on Wake Up, and we'll see how it all works. So first we'll have his standing kick, which is a 3-frame option. We'll even set him to do 6P, the dedicated anti-air button as well. Additionally, we'll have him do a DP, just to show you that this is also a safe jump. And there you have it. That's how meaty the setup is. It basically counters every single wake up option in the game and doubles as a burst bait during the initial setup just because you're jumping and blocking at the same time. There are a few exceptions to what counters this, of course, but I'll get to that later in the video, so don't worry about that just yet. Now, the timing for the jump kick isn't exactly automatic, but pretty easy once you get the hang of it. To practice without going through the combo constantly, set the dummy to do 5p after blocking, and then just do the super jump into jump kick, and immediately after landing do 2k. Your jump kick should be landing below or at least at their waist, and if done properly, your 2k should counter the follow-up. Just know that if you're hitting above the waist, on Wake Up you'll actually be whiffing the attack as the opponent hasn't become vulnerable just yet. So if you're not practicing the whole entire combo, you just need to keep this in mind. The last thing about the execution is that you're going to be holding back or down back in the air so that you can block any burst or DP attempts on Wake Up. But anyway, now that we know how this works, let's look at the different things you can get off this setup. So obviously we have the jump kick to get things started. Usually jump kick is pretty useless outside of being an air-to-air or combo filler, but in this case we've actually got pretty decent frame advantage on both hit and on block just because of how low we're connecting. On hit, we have enough time to get a 2D, which is a 10 frame normal, that leads to a knockdown into pressure if you're really wanting to keep the corner. Otherwise, we can actually fit in a close slash, heavy slash, sword toss, which will either break the wall or allow you to continue looping the pressure. Now, on block, you actually have enough frame advantage to get in a close slash on landing, which you should already be aware of how powerful this is for your corner game, since you basically have all your options available for follow-up, such as your command normals, your dust attacks, etc, etc. If done perfectly, this will actually even be a true block string, but depending on your timing, with very slight variance, this will be a frame trap for buttons afterwards. This also includes the fastest options in the game, the 3-frame normal, so if done perfectly, you don't have to worry about getting kicked out of it, but the more you delay, of course, the more variance there is for that. Now, once you've gotten your opponent to start respecting you, that's when we mix in the other options. Obviously, you can go for an empty jump low 2k into 2D string, and without the additional pushback from jump kick, this will now connect, as if you go from jump kick into 2k, 2D will whiff afterwards on follow-up. Or, you can even go for a throw if your opponent is really content on just sitting there and holding block. Also, if you're playing against someone without a 3-frame normal and you've really conditioned them with close slash on landing, you can actually even just go for a throw after the initial jump kick with a slight delay and a little bit of a walk up. The main thing to keep in mind with all of this though is the timing of your follow-up attack on landing. You can't immediately press your next button and need to wait just a smidge, but if you wait too long, it'll give your opponent the 1 or 2 frames they need to counter you, but with enough practice, this shouldn't continue to really be a problem. So now that we've explored most of the basic options, let's talk about the other things you can do with this setup. Of course, jump kick isn't the only way we can get this set up. Jump slash and heavy slash both work, and you can get just about as good of options as jump kick, but there are a few things to take note of. First, both jump slash and jump heavy slash put you a little bit further out than jump kick. Heavy slash puts you past the 50-meter gauge point, if you look down at our feet, and jump slash puts the meter point right in between. The reason this is important is just because getting a throw upon landing is going to be a little bit more difficult to do off of heavy slash, although jump slash is still pretty easy to get. Of course, once you start conditioning your opponent, it's still possible off of heavy slash, but every fraction of a second matters. I will say this is a nice way to get in a dash up 2k mix, which you can then lead into a tick throw follow-up or just another low or your other special cancel options, but it does lead to more room for getting countered. Now, the issue with both of these is that they're sometimes a bit more difficult to line up the timing so that you hit meaty without whiffing, without providing terribly too much additional frame advantage. Jumping heavy has a weird hitbox depending on what part of the animation you're in, and jumping slash isn't the most active thing in the world, and according to Dust Loop, both jump kick and jump slash have the same amount of active frames. Jumping slash is a bit more consistent to time, and you should be aiming to hit slash right at the top of his head for it to connect. But with heavy slash, the only thing I can say is that on this map, if you time your button with this big tree branch that's hiding behind Soul, that should hit properly on wake up. Get used to that timing and then you should be all good to go. Now, as far as safe jumps go, there is an alternative version of this off of close slash IAD in your combo or close slash into 5k IAD. Unfortunately, this is much trickier to time properly since you'll need to manually time the 2 attacks as they're not true Gatlings, as well as manually time the IAD. Additionally, you have to have good timing of the first close slash, as if you hit barely too late, you'll whiff the follow-up attack, and too early, you won't actually even grab the sword before jumping. Close slash into 5k is easier to set this up with, since close slash into close slash has a chance of getting far slash instead and whiffing, but whichever one you do, you have to have the slightest of delays before air dashing, otherwise you'll whiff, and if you recognize this too late, you're just going to get countered upon landing. Visually, the most consistent way to time this right is after you get the second close slash or your 5k, wait until a hair before the pushback from the attack finishes and then IAD, and this should do the trick, but with still very tight timing. Keep in mind, this is only to help you get the general feel of the timing of it. You can't really consistently try and look out for the pushback ending to get this off consistently, so just keep that in mind. So, in general, the first version where you're just super jumping is a bit more consistent as well as serving as a better burst bait, but the latter does allow for slightly more damage and tension build in the initial combo, but otherwise doesn't really have any advantages when it comes to the setup itself. Also, with the super jump, you still have your air dash option on top of it, so if you want to IAD back or forward, that's still something that you have in your pocket. To wrap up the setup itself, I just want to note that there isn't too much difference in frame advantage between jump slash and jump heavy slash. but the main thing that is different is visually what you're going for. If you keep doing a jump heavy slash as the overhead and simply not doing anything when going for the low, then the opponent might keep that in mind if they don't see the attack come out, but that's when you can throw in the jump kick or the jump slash again as a last second overhead to keep them on their toes. So with all that out of the way, let's now move on to how to defend against this. So this section is both for you to understand how the setup interacts with an opponent's options, and so that you know what to do yourself if you find yourself against a Ram that's doing the same thing. First, and the most basic, faultless defense. If the opponent FDs on wake up, jump kick will still allow all its normal options to connect on landings such as close slash, 2D, etc. However, this is not the case for jump slash and jump heavy slash. The initial pushback will make it to where you'll get far slash follow up in those cases if you don't do a micro dash forward after landing. This even applies to the IED version as well. You'll just get far slash as your momentum from IED won't even help you out here. Of course, if they are FDing, that means they can't jump, and you could just land and restart your pressure or go for an empty low or even a grab if you can recognize this. Moving on, we've got Fuzzy Guard, and if you're unsure of what this is for the sake of this video, it's essentially timing things fairly automatically to block both situations, without needing to react. This is honestly pretty easy to do if you know the timing, and coupled with FD, it can really shut this mix-up down. Basically, the Fuzzy Guard timing is just blocking high and waiting right before they hit the ground before switching low. As you can see, I can pretty consistently block this without needing to react, and when I FD, they aren't close enough to get a ton of their follow-up options afterwards if they're going to continue with their block strings. Keep your opponent guessing by swapping out the overhead options along with the threat of your grab, and hopefully you'll get around this. When going for the empty low, while 2D on its own isn't the slowest thing out there, I recommend 2K to start with, as this will force them to make their fuzzy timing that much tighter. Next is that the initial hit can be backdashed, since backdashes in this game have a bit of invulnerability during it, and if you aren't super quick, you could just miss your punish, so be on your toes with this. Hopefully they'll be trying to mash buttons afterwards, so with your follow-up options you might just be able to catch them out of this. Now, because this entire setup is going to be generally one giant series of frame traps, anyone, with the exception of Leo, can invincible reversal your landing follow-up. Leo just can't do this because he has to charge the input before doing the reversal. But of course, you can just hard read these and punish if you think they're going to go for it. As mentioned before, all of the overhead options, if perfectly timed, are going to be true block strings, so you might be able to catch them out of trying to do the input, but only by a couple of frames, so any amount of delay will give the opponent room to reversal or try and mash more buttons. Now, as for the direct counters, as far as I know, only Anji has this. And that's because he's blessed with a counter super, which negates the fact that this is a safe jump. It'll eat up your overhead and put you in a pretty rough spot, as it does a decent chunk of damage. Of course, this is just something that you'll just have to respect and try and bait out, but definitely something to keep in mind. Going for a whiff jump heavy could better bait this out, since they might try to react to the long animation, and you can land and throw or simply just punish the recovery. But there you have it. That should cover most everything here. There are some expansions to this tech that I'm currently working on, but I wanted to go ahead and get this video out there, so definitely do keep an eye out for part 2, hopefully coming soon. If you have any notes to mention or any questions, feel free to post them in the comments below, and I'll be sure to get to them when I can. And of course, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and share and all that fun YouTube stuff. I do have a few other videos planned for Ramlethal that cover pretty niche details about her, so if you're interested in that, be sure to subscribe for future content so you don't miss out, or at least peep the links in the description below so that you can stay up to date on my other platforms. But anyway, that's all for now, so if you stuck around this long, thanks for tuning in and watching, and I hope to see you again sometime soon. But until then, this is Ketchup Kami-sama, signing out, until next time.
And this is where I put
my outro.
if I had one.